y'all, it's me, Shaw 360, and I think the title for this one is a little cryptic for some of you, but for those of you who've been watching the news, you might understand what the title is when I ask, Are you Vanessa? I don't know how many of you follow me on social media outside of YouTube, but I do post quite a bit on Twitter. Twitter's probably where I'm the most active of anything. I post on Twitter every day. If I'm not posting, I'm retweeting, all that kind of thing. But there is a story in the news that has really captured my attention. It's a story that honestly, it kind of feels like it coalesces a lot of different things in life for me. Shawl underscore 360. Uh, like a lot of topics that are just important to me kind of all come together in one. And today, uh, just today's a sad day for that case. So I'm not sure how many of you have been paying attention, but there is a soldier from Fort Hood who's been missing now for, I want to say, about 2 months. And it's a female soldier. Her name is Vanessa. And she disappeared from duty. So she was on post. She wasn't off post. It wasn't during a time that she had off. She was leaving her duty station, and while she was leaving from being on duty and getting ready to go home, she had changed out of her military uniform into civvies and was ready to go. And they found her car keys, they found her identification card, they found all of her vital items in the locker room where she had changed clothes, but they could not find her. And when the family was approached about her being missing, which I believe she was reported missing when she didn't show up for her next shift of duty, the family had said that she had been sexually harassed at work, that one of her supervisors had walked in on her while she was showering, and that she had been afraid to report it because she didn't want retaliation. Well, in the last day or so, they believe they found her remains. And one of the soldiers who was suspected of being a part of her disappearance has committed suicide. It's a horrible story altogether. And I mean, it there's a lot of things in my life that I attach to this story for sure. But I think what made the story really hit home for me and like just really take me out was Vanessa's sister did a press conference where she screamed into the multiple microphones available and just said, My sister was a human. This shouldn't have happened. This shouldn't have happened while she was on duty. It shouldn't have happened on post. My sister is a soldier. My sister spends every day putting her life on the line, and she couldn't even be protected from the people in her own unit. And, you know, my dad was in the military, my stepfather. And I'll be honest, I'm gonna be telling y'all a lot of stuff tonight that I've meant to tell you guys for a long time, but then I'm just like, oversharing culture is what it is, and I don't want to really contribute to that. But my stepfather was in the military for many years. He was in the military for, I think, close to 15 years, maybe. And he left the military when I was a senior in high school, but he didn't leave because he wanted to. He left because he was given a choice. He was told he could either leave with an honorable discharge or he could have a dishonorable discharge, his choice. And this was after he had been moved duty stations. And it was because my stepfather was a sexual harasser. My stepfather, even though he was a man who raised me, and I know that he loved me in the best way that he could love anybody, my stepdad was an extremely narcissistic person, very selfish, very self-centered, and nothing held sanctity over his own desires. And so even though he was married to my mom, who was a beautiful woman, he cheated on my mom relentlessly. And when I say relentlessly, I mean He gave my mom scabies one time from a woman he was sleeping with. My brother caught him in bed with a woman that he was sleeping with. He hired a woman he was sleeping with to work at the restaurant that him and my mom ran. And my father, my stepfather, he sexually harassed many of the women soldiers that he worked with while he was with the military. And rather than discharge him dishonorably and possibly put him in jail, they chose to reassign him. And this is a story that a lot of soldiers can tell you, and a lot of families know about. And it feels weird to talk about it in this manner because I'm not the person who was harassed and I'm not the harasser. So it seems on the surface that I shouldn't have any commentary on this. But it does make a difference because when I found out about the things that my stepfather had done, why he had to leave the military, more than even the shame of knowing that that's the kind of person he was away from the house, more it was confirmation that every man who had ever mistreated me was what every man was. And I've had multiple men mistreat me. And I thought my stepfather was different because in one instance where a man really mistreated me, my stepfather stepped in to defend me. And then to find out that he was this way broke my heart because I felt like after that there were no men I could trust. So I'm just going to tell you now, trigger warning, I'm going to talk a lot about sexual assault and molestation. And I'm going to be talking about it in regards to me because these are my stories. And maybe by sharing this with you, it will help somebody. If more than anything, to know that you're not alone, to know that other people in the world will take you seriously if you are experiencing this, and to know that, there is strength to be had after experiencing the weakest points of your life. The first time I ever had a sexual encounter with anyone in my entire life was when I was 6 years old. I had a babysitter who was a young man that he would babysit me because he was super cheap and my parents would allow him to do so. And he touched me inappropriately. He had me touch him inappropriately. And sometimes my parents would drop me off at his house where he would babysit multiple people, and he would have me and some of the other children he was babysitting touch each other for him to watch. And I didn't know at that time how to tell anybody what was going on because I was 6 years old and I was a black child living in a black family, and in a black family you don't talk back to adults. Children are better seen than heard, and I just didn't have the ability to step outside of my childhood mindset and be like, this is wrong, I need to yell for help. Especially because there's so many things that people do when they're taking advantage of you. They make you feel like it's not abnormal, especially when it's done in a group. When it's you and other children, you don't think it's abnormal because the kids around you aren't saying that there's anything wrong. And so you're like, well, maybe I'm the weird one that I think this is wrong because no one else is complaining. So this went on for many months when I was a kid. And it only stopped because we moved. Literally, it only stopped because we moved to Germany. And I remember before we left, we were in a really shitty apartment, and my stepfather called the babysitter into the bedroom that my parents had, and he gave this guy a bunch of like girly magazines. And I mean, I don't believe that my stepfather knew that this was happening to me, but it's like this fraternity that men have that, like, sexuality is a joke, or that, being hypersexual is a form of masculine expression. And so, it's a thing that, friends do to pass along pornography and that kind of stuff. And it just, in that moment, it confirmed to me again that what had happened to me wasn't bad or weird, because my stepfather is patting this guy on the back and laughing and passing him these dirty magazines. So it's not a big deal. My stepfather is someone I had known since I was 2 years old. He did raise me. I'm not even gonna say practically, he did raise me. He raised me because my biological father couldn't. My biological father was on drugs and he was on crack. And that's the reason why whenever I hear somebody saying you're being a crackhead, it always strikes me as a really insensitive statement to say, because people have no idea nowadays how much crack wrecked families, how much it wrecked my family. My stepfather and my mom met shortly after my mom divorced my biological father. My biological father was abusing crack when he was married to my mom, and she had to leave him because he actually broke her ankle fighting with her. Fighting her. But my mom, because my mom believes the best in people, she would send me to go visit my father during the summertime for about a month at a time. And so one summer when I was visiting with my dad was really high, really high. And I was sleeping in my dad's bedroom because my dad only had one bedroom, and so it wasn't a big deal. And we were sleeping together in the bed, my biological father, like my DNA father, and I. And he was asking me to play a game with him where I was supposed to reach my hand out and he would tell me where to stop. And at one point, he had me reach my hand between his legs. And he did not have any clothes on. And it just so happened that the night that happened, my biological uncle was sleeping on the couch in the house. And when that happened, I got scared and I ran into the living room and I told my uncle. And he went into the bedroom where my father was. And I don't know what happened after that, but I didn't see my dad for the rest of the summer. I stayed with my aunts and my uncles on my dad's side for the rest of the summer. And it would be another 2 or 3 years before I saw my biological father again. And at that time, he was strung out and he didn't even recognize who I was. And then I saw him again another 2 years later, and that was the last time I saw him alive. And then he died of pneumonia. So I learned really early on that, number one, a girl child is not safe. And it doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter your size. It doesn't matter anything. A girl child's just not safe. Because as the years have gone by, I have heard from many, many other women that this has happened to them. If it didn't happen when they were my age, it happened when they were a little bit older. But it happens over and over again. And again, you don't tell anybody. I did tell my mom about what happened with my biological father. And I told her before he died. I told her because I had been hearing from my stepfather that my biological father was a bad guy. And he kept saying that because my biological father had been on drugs. He would always say, your dad was a crackhead, your dad's a drug fiend, your dad's a junkie. And I knew from his tone that obviously those were bad things. So I told my mom, this is the other bad thing that my dad has done. And credit to my mom, she stood up for me and she said, you don't ever have to see him again if you don't want to. And if you do want to see him again, I'll be right there with you. And so I appreciate that. After we all moved as a family back to the States from living in Germany, my biological father died right after we got back to the States. I saw him one time and then he died. And we moved into a house. And there was a military family that lived down the street and around the corner from our house. And they had a daughter who was around the same age as me. And I really enjoyed playing with her. And we would hang out and go play on the swing sets. We would walk around the neighborhood. We would just have a really great time. And at this time, I was 12, almost 13. And it was the day after Christmas. I remember going to her house because I got a new bicycle for Christmas. And I went to her house to show her my bike. And her dad answered the door. She was not in the living room, and I told her dad, hey, can you go get her? I'd like to play. He's like, yeah, no problem. Let me go let her know you're here. He goes to her room to let her know I'm there. He's like, oh, she'll be out in just a minute. She's got to get dressed. She's in pajamas. While we're in the living room, I'm 12 years old, he squeezes my butt. And when I say squeeze my butt, like squeeze my butt. It wasn't a pat. It wasn't a graze. It was a squeeze. And he just looked at me and expected me to react. And at that point, I couldn't react. I just could not react. Like, I couldn't say no. I couldn't say yes. I just stood there, frozen. And I went and rode bikes with his daughter. And then after we rode bikes, I went home. And I went home and I told my mom and I told my dad. And my stepdad went to this house, and I don't know what happened after he went to this house, but within about 2 or 3 weeks from that visit, they moved out of our neighborhood. And that's why when I was in high school and I found out about my stepfather sexually harassing women that he worked with in the military, I was shocked, because this is a man who had stood up for me against somebody who was in the military who sexually harassed me. And I never thought that somebody who would defend something wrong would then be wrong. But, you know, that just goes to show sometimes the good guys aren't the good guys, you know? But rounding the topic all out and going back to kind of the initial point of it all, hearing about Vanessa was just one of a series of stories related to sexual assault, sexual harassment of women that has really just been on my radar lately, and it's kind of pushed me towards disclosing these stories that I had been meaning to disclose for a really long time, because I'm tired of people using sexual abuse survivors as a get out of jail free card. I put it on my Twitter. I did like 3 posts in a row about it, but there's a lot of things happening when it comes to the media and the news and society and how it relates to sexual abuse. There's a lot of people who do a lot of really shitty things and they blame it on being abuse survivors. They say that, oh, I was abused when I was a kid and it really fucked me up, and so that's the reason why I did fucked up things when I got older. And so many people have said this and done this that now when you say I was assaulted when I was younger or I was molested when I was younger, people look at you as if you're just saying, oh, I broke my ankle when I was younger. It's looked at as something that everyone goes through. It's not a big deal. It's not harmful. And it's not an excuse. I agree in many ways that it's not an excuse for some things. It's not an excuse for being racist. It's not an excuse for being sexist. It's not an excuse for being ableist. It's not an excuse for being homophobic. What it could possibly be an excuse for is the terror that some of us walk around in our daily lives with when it comes to sexuality. I married a man who I really loved. And to this day, he is still a person whose welfare and well-being I'm very concerned about. Not only because he's my daughter's father, but because he's a really good guy. But before I married him, I had a very screwed up way of thinking about intimacy between partners. I had a really screwed up way of looking at relationships between men and women because of everything that had happened to me before then. Because of enduring sexual molestation as a child, like a kindergartner, first grader child, as a result of experiencing sexual harassment as a middle schooler, as a result of having my own father contribute to my fear of intimacy and nakedness and touch. I didn't know how to deal with a lot of things when it came time to be in a relationship with a man because I was terrified. I was terrified that I wouldn't be sexual enough. I was terrified that I would do the wrong thing. I was terrified of saying no if I wasn't in the mood because I didn't want this person to dislike me, and I felt like this was my job in the relationship to always be available. And God love him, my ex-husband never did anything that I didn't want him to do. He never took advantage of me. He was always a really good guy in that respect. But I held a lot back from him. I held a lot back from him because I was afraid to really express myself. And once I had my child, I made it a point early on to always let her know your body is your own. No one's allowed to touch your body without your permission. If anyone ever touches your body without your permission, you're supposed to tell me. Never be alone with a man or a woman. Always be in groups. Never be afraid to tell me if someone scares you. I spent so much time talking to her as she grew up because I was so afraid that she would go through the things that I went through and be afraid to say anything or not know that she was allowed to say anything to me. Because like I said, as a kid, I didn't know I could say anything. And about 3 or 4 months ago, there was a tweet that was going around on Twitter asking you what age you were when you were first sexually assaulted. And I answered it. And it had been a long time since I had even thought about it. But when somebody wrote back, "I'm sorry this happened to you," I wrote back that, "Thank you. My only job now is to increase my daughter's number." So my number started in the single digits. And I felt like sexual abuse is an inevitability as a woman. So all I can do is I can hope that I can make it to where Stephanie's number is in her late teens or in her 20s. But it's going to happen to all of us. But that shouldn't be true. It shouldn't be expected that at some point in our lives as women, we're going to be assaulted. It shouldn't be expected that at some point in our lives, we're going to be abused or molested or any of these other things. That shouldn't be par for the course. It shouldn't be like you're going to grow pubic hair and you're going to get molested one day. Those shouldn't be inevitabilities. One should, but not the other. But again, we have a society where certain people use sexual assault, sexual molestation as an excuse for the bad things they do. And then there are people who are even worse and who make up sexual abuse allegations for clout, for revenge, for money. And then when they're discovered, all of a sudden the conversation becomes, And that's why you don't trust somebody when they tell you they've been assaulted. Because look at the people who lie. Even if it's not said overtly, even if it's not said in so many words, that is the message that comes across. And it is the most dangerous message we can put out there for people. Because it does two things. One, it tells those of us who have actually experienced sexual abuse that no one's going to believe you anyway, because people who say that they've been assaulted are known liars. But also, it sends a message to those people that are contemplating sexual abuse or have already committed sexual abuse of people that you could get away with it, because there's always a shadow of a doubt when it comes to those people who report the crime or who share the knowledge that something bad has happened. People know folks lie about sexual abuse. So you can get away with it and just say they're lying. And somebody's going to believe you, because now the burden of proof isn't on you, it's on them. There's a movie on Netflix that's based on a true story of a woman who was raped. And she was raped by like a serial rapist. And when he raped her, he made her take a shower, scrub her genitals, clean all over herself to get rid of his DNA, and then he threatened to kill her and left. She went to the police. Because of her mental trauma from the rape, she was emotionless as she was telling the police what happened to her. So the police didn't believe her. And for years, they didn't believe her, to the point that they harassed her and she had to leave the city she lived in because the police looked at her as a perpetual liar, because there was no DNA and there was no evidence that anything had happened. Flash forward several years later, serial rapist found, pattern of abuse found, multiple women abused. And that one who was brave enough to tell their story had been so harassed by the police that she reported it to that she couldn't even stay in her home. These are the rewards for the people who talk. And I don't have an answer on how to fix this. I don't have an answer on how to fix this because I don't even know how to fix it for myself. Years later, my biological father is dead, my stepfather is dead, I don't know where these other abusers are. And I'm not raising a son, I'm raising a daughter. And the only thing I can do to try to prevent this from happening to another young woman is by teaching my daughter what to do to make herself less of a target. And do you realize how fucked up that is? Because I was a victim, I have to put my child on the defense. So she can't freely dress how she wants to. She can't freely express herself how she wants to. She can't walk outside at night. She can't go through alleys by herself. She's got to stay in a group. Don't be out late. Don't leave your drink unattended. Yeah, this all sounds like common sense information, but where is it rooted at in common sense? It's rooted in the fact that women have to live precautious lives because if they don't, it's their fault that something bad happened to them. It's their fault. I'm just going to take a quick break because this wasn't a prepared speech. So I want to make sure that I give you the proper information here. I don't want to lie to you. So I'm going to look up the movie from Netflix because someone asked me what movie that was. Unbelievable. That's the name of the movie. So if anybody would like to go on to the Netflix, it's actually a series. It's a mini series called Unbelievable. And it is about a series of rapes in Washington State and Colorado. And it is based on a true story. It is an 8-part series. And yeah, so you can look that up if you'd like to. But I wanted to make sure I put that resource out there because I didn't want you guys to kind of have this floating in your mind, and if you're interested, not being able to find out where to get this information from. Uh, yeah. So, as I was saying before, it's your fault. Society tells us it's your fault. How many of you, if you follow American news, remember the story of Brock Turner? Brock Turner was a Stanford swimming scholarship recipient. And one night, after a party, or during a party, he goes into the alley behind where the party is taking place, and he sees a young woman passed out by the dumpster. And rather than going over and being like, hey, are you okay? Do you need some help? Do you need a ride? Instead, he proceeds to rape her. And as he's raping her, 2 people who were out bicycling at night, I don't know why, but they were, saw him raping this girl. And they pulled him off of her and restrained him until the police could show up. And this young woman woke up in the hospital finding out from the nurses and doctors there that she had had a rape kit performed on her because she had been raped. She was completely unconscious when this happened. She couldn't say no, she couldn't say yes because she was unconscious. Brock Turner came from an affluent family, which is how he was able to get good at swimming because he had parents who could afford to get trainers and the like. And he was able to get a scholarship in swimming and thought himself to be an Olympic hopeful. And because of that, his parents wrote a letter to the judge asking that the judge be lenient because Brock has his whole life ahead of him, and something like this could ruin his future. Meanwhile, his victim has her life ruined. Can you imagine what it would be like to wake up and know that someone had entered your body? They didn't break into your home and invade your privacy and your security at your home, but they had entered your body. How do you ever feel comfort with yourself? How do you ever feel security with yourself? How do you feel like you ever belong to you again? Brock Turner served 3 months in jail for that. 3 months in jail. Paid some fines. Probation. That's how much the loss of this woman's mental security was worth to the criminal justice system. And even during the trial, people said Well, she shouldn't have gotten so drunk. Why the hell would she go out and party so hard that she would pass out? I mean, maybe if she didn't get so drunk, he couldn't have taken advantage of her. You know, sometimes I walk to the supermarket and they'll have pumpkins sitting outside the supermarket, just out on the sidewalk. There's no cash register around. They're just sitting there on the sidewalk. I could easily pick a pumpkin up, walk back to my car, and drive off. I could steal that pumpkin. But you know I don't, because stealing is wrong. And if I grabbed that pumpkin and I put it in my car and I drove off, I don't think anybody would say, well, it's the grocery store's fault for leaving the pumpkins on the sidewalk. Or it's the pumpkin's fault for not being locked up in a cage. No, it would be my fault, because I should know that stealing is wrong, and so I shouldn't steal. But invariably, the conversation is, women should know better. Women should protect themselves. Women shouldn't put themselves in these kinds of positions. It's never, men should know better. Men should quit being creeps. Men should not find themselves in these positions. There was another video I watched on YouTube. It was on the Vice channel. There's I would say maybe in her 20s lesbian woman who is doing a series of religious discussions. So discussions about what it's like to be transgendered in the church, discussions about, you know, what it's like to be a gay Muslim, and she interviews different people from different segments of Christianity and world religion to talk about what it's like to be a member of the LGBTQIA community in religious circles. And one of the people that she interviewed was a young lady, because she did a story about, you know, LGBTQIA and contemporary Christian music. And this lady was a former contemporary Christian musician. And she left it because she just kind of ideologically fell out of place with, you know, the whole scene. But one of the things she talked about is, as a Christian singer, as a woman, she was given a list of things that you can't say, that you can't wear, that you can't do. She was told that if they're on a stage and they're performing, if it's an upbeat song, she can't jump because it might make her chest jiggle. And we're talking about people at church. We're not talking about somebody at the strip club, not that that would matter. We're not talking about somebody in a seedy environment. We're talking about a group of people in a church-like setting, and the woman is being told that the men can jump up and down in praise, but you need to not do that, because they might see your moving breasts and be turned on, and it will invite Satan in. You are the invitation for Satan to corrupt a man. Church attendance is at an all-time low. Why? Because messages like that, nobody wants to hear that nowadays. Nobody wants to be told that you are a more sinful vessel than the man next to you, because you can tempt him into sin by your very appearance. No one ever tells men don't wear gray sweatpants because women can see the print. But us, we've got to temper ourselves, and we've got to tone down ourselves, because we are inherently wrong. It starts with Eve, ladies. It starts with Eve. Y'all, I'm so tired. And I'll continue to be tired for the rest of my life. I'll never stop being tired. Not until the day I draw my last breath. but I'm also tired of being quiet. So I'm on here on YouTube telling you my story and telling you how I feel because I want you to know you have an ally. You have someone who will listen to you. You have someone who believes you. And I'm not the only one. There are so many people like me who believe you. There's so many people like me who are listening to you. Don't be coward in fear because of the messages you get from ignorant people, because of the messages you get from the media, because of the messages you get sometimes even from the people you trust. You may have people in your life that are very well intentioned, that you believe are good people. And even good people can make bad decisions. Even good people can be flawed. Even good people can have really fucked up ways of thinking because of the way they've been socially trained. But you have a right to be heard. You have a right to be believed, and you have a right to be supported. And I don't care how many men or women come out with false reporting of sexual harassment. I don't care. I don't care. I'm always going to believe victims. I'm always going to believe victims until I'm proven otherwise. Because I've seen too much what happens when you don't believe victims. I wish I had talked about what happened to me when I was 6. When I was 6. I wish I had had a chance to go through therapy, and I wish I had a chance to learn how to love my body and not see my body as something to be used for somebody else. I wish that I had a chance to learn how to be in relationships in a healthy way. I wish I didn't hold secret fears for my own child because of my experience. But this is my life now. This is it. And all I can do moving forward is live the best life I can be the best ally I can be, and continue to hope that I'm not doing anything that's going to contribute to somebody else being stuck in silence. But I can promise you this, and this is not related to anything in particular, but there'll never be a time when I'll do something fucked up and I'm going to say, oh, it's because I was molested when I was a kid. That's never going to happen. Not here, not never. Because while I have to live with the scars of a really messed up past, I actively work every single day to get better. I actively work every single day to improve. And I actively work every single day to earn the right to be proud of myself and to allow my daughter to be proud of me. I don't ever want her to have a day where the curtain is lifted and she sees what a piss poor excuse of a human being I am. It hurt my heart to find out that my stepfather was sexually harassing people. It hurt my heart to know that it was common operating practices to just reassign people once they've been caught sexually harassing someone. And it really put a deep and sharp divide in my relationship with my stepfather. Things were never the same. They were never the same. I don't want my daughter to have that awkward and painful revelation in her future. I want to be someone that she can always be proud of. Even if she doesn't always agree with me, I want her to always be proud of me. And that's what a lot of us who are survivors of sexual abuse are doing. Every day, we're living a better life. Every day, we're trying to be better than the people that hurt us. So I sincerely hope that if you're Vanessa and you're being harassed and you're afraid of someone hearing you, speak up before it's too late. Speak up. Don't be afraid of people critiquing you or lying about you or saying you're not to be believed. You know what the truth is. You know what the truth is. And I'm going to defend your right to get justice until the very end. Because you deserve. You deserve. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry if this was not the conversation some of you wanted to have or needed to have right now. And I get it's heavy. I get it's heavy. But as established in many other conversations we've had, this isn't just a K-pop channel. This is my life. And for those of us who enjoy K-pop and other entertainment avenues, that's all well and good. But we're still out here living our lives. And sometimes we just have to talk about real life. Sometimes we need to take a break from the kiki and we need to break it down like this. So thank you guys for listening. I super appreciate it. And if there's anything that you need to talk to me about, like I said, my DMs are open. So you can find me on Twitter, because that's where I'm the most active, Shawwal_360. And yeah, I'm here for you guys. Take care of yourselves.